Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central this evening right here in Kent, Ohio. No need to get bent just because we're coming to you from Kent, because we'll make sure that when it's all over with, you will feel like your time has been well spent. Absolutely, absolutely. Meanwhile, you know what we need you to do, so go ahead and get jiggy with it. You might as well just go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel right now. Don't wait till later, because later is not going to be any greater and you're not going to be feeling any straighter. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and read you some thoughts from the mind of Dr. Crosby. And one of the thoughts that he always liked to leave us with as children is that if we said something that sounded odd, incredulous, out of pocket, etc., he often would like to say, "You must be out your cotton picking mind." And I never could figure out why he was always talking about our cotton picking mind, because I had never picked no cotton before in my whole entire life. But I'll tell you somebody who did pick a bale of cotton, pick a bale a day, and that is none other than Fannie Lou Hamer, who is featured in the book that we'll be reading a poem from right about now, Fannie Lou Hamer, Voice of Freedom, because that woman did have a voice of freedom. And this poem is entitled On the Move. On the ride home, a policeman stopped our bus to arrest the driver on account of the yellow bus looked too much like a school bus. A phony charge if I ever heard one. We emptied our pockets, scraped together $30 toward a bogus fine, and back at the plantation, my boss had already set my stuff in the road. Do you hear me? He put my stuff out on the side of the road. Said they wasn't ready for that in Mississippi. He gave me a choice: withdraw my name at the courthouse or move on. That was my choice. All I could say was, I didn't go down there to register for you. I was down there to register for myself. And if that means I gotta move, well then I guess I'll just be moving. Later that night I left my home and family to move in with the Tuckers. But before long, night riders came around. They shot in the house 16 times, thinking that I was there. I couldn't risk the Tuckers' lives. For 2 months, I moved from place to place, hiding out over here, hiding out over there with friends and family. Then I rented a house in town near my family. Soon as I moved in, I marched back into that courthouse and retook the test. What did I have to lose? There was nothing they could do to me. They couldn't fire me because I didn't have a job. They couldn't put me out of my house because I didn't have one. There was nothing they could take from me any longer. A month later, I heard that I had passed. Now, ain't that a kick in the teeth? Just to register to vote. That's all the woman was trying to do. Something that all of us take for granted, that we all should be able to do as long as we are citizens of the USA. But that's how we look at it today. That's not how it's always been. And guess what? It's getting ready to get a whole lot more difficult, because they're in the process now of turning back the clock, if you can believe that. It's true. They're in the process of turning back the clock right about now. And so it could just be that next time it's time to vote in a presidential election, a whole lot less of us will be able to vote because somebody done messed with the clock. They've turned back the hands of time. Something that we all thought was impossible to do. But guess what? In today's world, there's some people out here making the impossible possible. And it's time for us to do some of the same. Why didn't black people just leave the South? Hundreds of thousands did, as a matter of fact. Moving north to Chicago, Detroit, New York, and other big cities of the North. But many Northerners, instead of welcoming them, feared that black folks would take their jobs away. Northern states didn't have a whole lot of Jim Crow laws, but discrimination, the unfair treatment of black people because of prejudice about them, was just as strong against blacks in the North as it was in the South. Now, you know what? I believe I read this part yesterday. Right. Not only did I read it, I actually read it and I did some commentary on it as well. So we're going to skip that part since we've already read that part. And we're going to move on into a new section of this little book right here and see what other interviews that we can find of young people, of some of their elders who they know to have been in the civil rights struggle of the 1950s and the 1960s. Wow, I had to go a ways to find some more interviews. This one here is Ashley Glover with Helen Wright. Ashley, my name is Ashley Glover and I am with Mrs. Helen Wright. Her husband was a judge who decided that segregation was wrong and even went and said so. And my parents know her. So, here I am. Mrs. Wright, my first question is, what exactly did your husband do? Helen, my husband, Skelly, was a federal judge in New Orleans when the famous Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, called for all schools to be integrated so that black children would have the same opportunity for a good education as white children. In Louisiana, as in many southern states, schools were segregated. Skelly ordered New Orleans to desegregate its schools. Ashley, well, that's a good thing, right? Helen, well, not everyone in New Orleans thought so. It was a very hectic, unpleasant time. White women stood in front of schools with their hair curlers on and screamed at and taunted the black children. They had to bring out the fire hoses to quell the mobs of people. At one point, they almost shoved Judge Wright into the street to be hit by a car. Ashley, on purpose? Helen, one would have to assume so. Judge Wright received many death threats. The hate mail was incredible. It was an awesome armload of manila folders, probably 3 feet high, which I took to the Department of Psychiatry at Tulane, a university in New Orleans, for research. Ashley, did the KKK send it? Helen, well, most of it was anonymous, you see. There were no signatures or addresses. And I remember I always used to think if you didn't have the courage to sign your name, you didn't have no business writing in the first place. Now, did you? Ashley, didn't your friends think you were doing a good thing? Helen, well, you know, that's interesting, honey. I had a friend who I knew didn't approve of integration, not one bit. One day, she turned to me and said, Helen, There's something I just must say to you. And I said, oh, now, never mind. We can be friends in spite of the difference of opinion. And she said, no, there's something I have to say. There are times when I'm ashamed to be seen with you. And I said, well, I'll tell you something. You need never be ashamed again. And that was the end of our alleged friendship. But there were also wonderful friends who supported us, not just because they felt Skelly was doing what was right, but because they admired his courage. It was a wonderful lesson. If lessons like that are wonderful in learning who your real friends are. Ashley, I think that about wraps it up. Skelly Wright died several years ago, but there's a quote on the mantle in Mrs. Wright's home where he talks about how you have to do the right thing, no matter how hard it is. He says ending segregation will require the utmost patience, understanding, generosity, and forbearance from all of us. Thanks, Mrs. Wright, for talking to me. And that takes us back to Dr. Crosby. One of his sayings being, if you're going to do it right. Or, alternatively, if you're going to do it, just do it. Sounds a lot like the Nike slogan, don't it? If you're going to do it, just do it. Or, if you're going to do it right. And so, that is our story for tonight. I'm wondering if I have time to read maybe one more. Let's see if I can read one more tonight with the time that we have left. We got a few minutes left. This one is Matthew Jackson with Ruth Jackson. Ruth, okay, here are Matthew and Mom sitting by the side of the bed, going to talk about equal rights and justice. You know that. Matthew, otherwise known as the Civil Rights Movement, and how my mother was involved. Did you take part in any marches or protests, Mama? Ruth, yes, I did. When I was young, one of the civil rights groups in Kansas City decided that we were going to have some demonstrations, some sit-ins and stand-ins, and we were going to protest at some of the movie theaters where the first run movies played, where you had the big screens and the big stereo sound and safe parking lots, and where black people were not allowed. Matthew, what grade were you in then? A little older than you. I was in the 8th grade, child. Matthew, and were you out protesting? Ruth, yes, and it was a tremendous responsibility for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade children. Matthew, did they just throw you out there? No, we had to learn how to protest. We went down on Saturdays to the Y, and we did training to be protesters. It was funny. We'd get all dressed up in little skirts and sweaters because they made a big deal out of what you wore. We had to look nice. We'd get into separate lines in the gymnasium of the Y, and one group would be the white people, and we'd be ourselves, and we'd practice marching back and forth, holding up our signs and just being quiet, back and forth, and back and forth. And they would practice trying to get us upset. They'd come up to try to push you into what was supposed to be the wall. They'd try to trip you. They'd yell, hey, nigga, hey, coon. All the bad things they expected the white people were going to call us. And they would try to snatch the signs right out of our hands. And they even spat on us. Matthew, wasn't spitting on each other demeaning, even in practice? Ruth, sure. But we knew that it was probably going to happen, and we wanted to be ready. We were practicing self-control because the idea was that we were just going to be quiet. We were going to stand there and take it no matter what. And if you weren't able to, if you didn't pass the practice, you couldn't go. Matthew, that does sound hard. Ruth, it was really scary, Matthew, And even when I think about it now, I choke up inside. And some of us didn't make it. Some of the girls would cry. The boys would want to fight back. And if you showed emotion, you couldn't go. Because we didn't want to incite any kind of conflict. We were trying to say we're good enough, as if to be good enough to go into a white theater meant we had to have better manners and better self-control than white people who'd be calling us names and spitting on us. Matthew, did anybody ever hurt you? Ruth, no, nobody hurt me. Physical hurt wasn't part of it. It was all psychological. I had always learned in history class about America being the great melting pot. I wondered why I had to be defined by my black heritage alone. I guess it's the way we look that makes the difference. People only see us from the outside. I hope that's not always the way it is for you, baby. I hope they see all of who Matthew is. Are you getting tired? I'm getting tired. It's hard to talk about some of these things. Matthew, all right. Thanks, Mom, for telling me all about the real facts of life. Thanks, Mom, for sharing with me a true story. Thanks, Mom, for not just telling me some fairy tales. Because what good is a fairy tale going to do when you got to deal with real life and real strife? So when people talk about the talk, the so-called talk, it makes me have to squawk, and then sometimes I just have to walk, because I got to balk when I hear somebody talking about that talk, when we've been talking all about what's been going down for years upon years upon years upon umpteen years, and we still have to walk around in fear. When we see a police, we got to look straight ahead. Don't turn and look at him, because that could get him to, he might pull you over just for looking at him sideways. What kind of life is that? That you can't look at somebody without fear? What kind of life is that when you got to walk off the sidewalk? You know, in some parts of the USA, you still have to walk off the sidewalk when white folks come by. And if you don't have to walk all the way off, maybe the sidewalk's a little bit wider, you still have to move out of the way, because them white folks will run right into you if you don't. So it's still like this today. We're still having to deal with this today. And you don't realize that it's even that way sometimes until you stop moving. When you stop, the day you stop moving over is the day you realize that if you don't move over, there are still people out there that will run right into you because they know you're going to move at the last minute. Well, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And you're just not going to know when that's going to be. I like to keep them in suspense. In the meanwhile, children, we're going to go ahead and end our stories for tonight. And we're going to end the way we always do, with you putting your little head on your little pillow, on your little bed, and closing your eyes while you wait on that sun to rise. And when you feel those sunbeams beaming down on your eyes, you'll know that it's time for you to rise and shine, old children of mine. And in the meantime, all you adults out there, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. Well, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Now's the time. You heard my rhyme. Now drop that dime. Or just spend a little time pushing a little button. That's all we ask you to do right now. But if you want, you could toss a donation this way as well, because that'll help keep us on the air. That'll help keep us on the internet. That'll help keep us in your ear and in your face, telling you stories about what it's like to be a member of the black race in the USA. Peace out without a doubt, with a whole lot of justice. Good night to one. Good night to all, including Tony Johnson. We will see y'all later. Look for our playlist over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 12 o'clock noon. We'll be here with Real Talk, or you'll find the other playlist we'll put up is from the book of Crosby. From the book of Crosby or Real Talk. Those are the two playlists this weekend. Check it out without a doubt. I think you'll like it. In the meantime, we're out.